So I wanted to make this video to kind of end, or at least help better understand the situation as it relates to the criminal offense in the UK. Now, I'm a law professor and a lawyer, and I work in the space. It's not my area of specialty. Like, I don't talk about abortion law, but I do integrate abortion law into my own area of expertise. I would also describe myself as a regulatory theorist. So I kind of look at the big picture and try and think about the unintended and intended consequences of any law, um, and think about perspective. So if you're familiar with the film Vantage Point, how you look at it from multiple vantage points results in very, very different interpretations. And so the whole purpose of this is to just give a little bit of clarity about the law and explain how we got into the situation that we're in. And I also want to say from the record, I really appreciate the chatty uh, midwife's video, and my video is only in reaction to some of the confusion that has clearly arisen in some of the comments, and to answer some of the questions that have popped up to me. And I'm also 100% pro-choice. This is an area where I'm only trying to explain the law. Now, what I would like to do is say that this is in part to some of the confusion that you find online. So if you Google is abortion legal in the UK, you get these kind of information, and then you get, it's illegal or it remains a criminal offense and these types of things. So all I'm trying to do is address this issue of criminality in the UK. On my own website, or my own NHS website, it says legally in Scotland, England, Wales, you can have abortion up to 24th weeks with agreement of two doctors, and some advice, obviously, thereof. So I want to start with the law. So I want to just really touch really quickly on this provision here and the wording of the law, because I think this goes to explain some of the ambiguity. So you go back to the 1800s and all the way up to 1967, the world is a very, very different place. And there are two primary actors here. There are women, and there are the backstreet abortionists who are providing women a service in dangerous, and sometimes, life is taken from them during these awful procedures. And if this is conceptualized and dramatized in the film Dirty Dancing. So if those of you who have seen Dirty Dancing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So the world is very different in 1967. The reason why this is brought up is it is viewed at the time as a pro-women law, and it's considered very progressive at the time. But I want to be very clear that a person shall not be guilty of an offense under the law, and then you have these conditions here. So A through D are conditions. So this is very different. Now, they could have written the law very differently. They could have said a person is guilty of an offense if they terminate, unless, but they don't do that. They do the inverse. And this is a very important distinction. So, all other criminal offenses, a person is guilty of an offense if they kill somebody, if they bring a knife to a fight, if they, you're guilty offense if you're speeding, right? If you break the speed limit, all of these, this is the rule. And then you have exceptions. So you're guilty of an offense of speeding unless there is a medical emergency. That would be an exception to the general here. Here, it's not. The general rule is not guilty of an offense, and these are the conditions. Now, I know this isn't a perfect metaphor, but hear me out. It is legal to drink alcohol in the United Kingdom if you are of a certain age. However, what happens at the same time is that you put a burden on the shopkeeper to be responsible and check the ID of somebody who is trying to purchase alcohol. So if you are in doubt, check for ID. Probably seen this. It's our obligation to check. So by giving somebody the right to do something, you also create a legal obligation on another actor. In this case, it's the shopkeeper. So the medical termination of pregnancy general rule also created a new actor. So now we're moving away from the backstreet abortionists that were doing these horrific procedures where lots of women were dying, and creating the abortion as a medical issue that had to be administered by doctors. So immediately you've changed the primary actors, or the primary actor here is the woman, the secondary actor regulated by the law is the medical practitioner. And you can see that, ironically, Chatty Midwife is the benefit of this rule because she works, I presume, in a clinic for reproductive health. And so this is why this rule and understanding it is so important to understanding the debate. Now, if you flash forward to Health and Care Act of 2022, and in particular Section 178, you see this phrase here. This is about early medical termination of pregnancy. And you can see that the law of abortion is actually expanded in line with the times. Now, what I mean by that is we now have medicines that allow medical termination of pregnancy, and that this is now permitted. So you don't even have to go to a medical clinic to do it. The medicine may be self-administered by the pregnant woman at that place. So the law of granting access to termination of pregnancy has actually expanded rather than constricted or been restricted in any way. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I feel like there is this narrative through some of the discussions about what is amounting to a criminal procedure. So let's go back to the Abortion Act. And that the pregnancy is not excited its 24th week, and the continuance of the pregnancy would involve risk greater than the pregnancy were terminated. And it's terminated by a registered medical practitioner if two medical practitioners over the opinion. So the reason why this is important is go back to 1967 or the law. You can look this parliamentary debate up on Hansard, is that it was sought to bring about legitimacy, and it was also sought to end the Black Street abortionists. So you go to an abortion, you go to seek a termination of your pregnancy by a doctor in good faith, with two practitioners agree that it's in the best interest. Now, there's lots of contentious messaging around this idea of two doctors, and I think there's a very strong argument that that could be reduced to one, but that's not the purpose of this video. But at the time, the reason why that this was given is that there is lots of reasons why you might want to have some sort of medical friction to an abortion. So say somebody presents and they're not of good mental health, or somebody presents and they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol and they can't make an informed decision about, then you might want to have some friction to the exercise of the termination of pregnancy. And that's why these clauses were put in. So it was, again, at the time, let's get rid of the backstreet abortionists and let's make this a public health issue by establishing the grounds for which somebody can safely do an abortion and terminate their pregnancy. And let's also create the right to be able to do something under conditions, which is very different than saying it's illegal with exceptions. And I know it sounds like it's two sides of the same coin, but I don't agree with that. And that's why we have these kind of rules which expand. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up was, if you go back to the Northern Ireland Executive Formation Act, and you go to the early rules of relating to this, you will see that this article, British abortionist laws are still in the Victorian women or the collateral damage, written by Sally Sheldon. And one of the things that she points out here is prosecutions of women ending their own pregnancies have until recently been rare. There's only 3 cases between 1861 and 2022, when the most publicized was this 2013 case. Now, this has been a dramatic rise in police investigations, fueled by greater awareness of abortion pills, following the introduction of telemedical abortion services during the pandemic here. So what she's talking about here is this. So if the pregnant woman's usual place of residence is England, Wales, and she has a consultation with a registered nurse or registered midwife about the termination of pregnancy, the medicine should be administered by the pregnant woman in that place. Now, unfortunately, as was the case between 1960, pre-1967, where you had the backstreet abortionists that were butchering women, often ending their lives. In this era, you have people pushing illegal drugs to women who are desperate for a termination of a pregnancy. Sometimes they've kept the baby and their partner is abusive, and the partner procures the medicine and the partner forces the woman. And so when something horrific happens, and there is, by horrific, I mean forcing a woman to take a pill, that will trigger an investigation. And I think sometimes that this is lost in this discussion. So the criminality is because, or the criminal access of abortion is about procurement, about sourcing an abortion, because we don't charge women with offenses relating to procuring abortions and terminations of pregnancies. As has been noted here, since 1861 and 2022, there have been three cases. And this was a person who had a serious history of a mental illness, and she'd bought pills online and used them to terminate pregnancy that was well beyond the 24 legal limit. And I don't want to make comment on this, but all I want to say is that if you think of this a little bit differently, if you think about this rule, not only giving women the right to terminate their pregnancy and not being guilty of an offense, but thinking about the impact that it has on the people who were the secondary actors back in pre-1967, which were the backstreet abortionists. And then you think a little bit differently about the modern developments of medicine and watch the law develop over time, you will see that the primary person, the woman, the secondary, the medical doctors. And now what we're doing is that there's criminal law exists to punish the people who are illegal charlatans selling illegal drugs. And so when somebody has access to medicine which is not used properly, and that person is procuring the medicine to give to a woman, causing horrible health effects, nasty consequences, we have to have a conversation about society. That's who the criminal offense is applied to. It's about the people who are illegally providing abortions, not the medical professionals who are complying with the conditions of the 1967 Act, the medical termination provision. So no person shall be guilty of an offense if they seek medical advice, so create the proper means of getting one, and you satisfy these conditions. And there's a little bit of friction put into the law to ensure that somebody that shows up that's under drugs, under the influence of alcohol, somebody that has mental health issues, somebody that's been abused, somebody that's been forced into seeking an abortion by a partner, that the medical practitioner can provide a little bit of friction to make sure that doing this is in the right interest, or maybe the health, like the health care, like the life of the woman is at risk if she undergoes the procedure, but the boyfriend or the partner is putting pressure. It's a little bit of friction in order to ensure that there's going to be no horrible consequences for the female as a result of undergoing a termination of pregnancy. So I hope that this will clarify that this isn't just about giving women's rights. It's about creating the framework to do it safely and to make this a public health issue. And then also using the criminal law to deter people from undertaking illegal medicines or procuring illegal medicines and using them unsafely. Now, I don't, I obviously have my own opinion about that, but I think that what the law should operate is as to grant people access, to provide safety and security for women to seek access to information and procedures. And it also should deter the bad actors who are often abusing women, forcing them to terminate pregnancies, or often selling drugs illegally on the internet, which we all know to be happening. And that's why I think criminal law has a role in this, and you can make your own determinations about whether you think I'm right or not. So hopefully that will have explained this position a little bit better. Thank you.